You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. I hope you guys are ready for an evening jam-packed with news, because I couldn't even be allowed to drive to the state of Wisconsin for this Maranatha Leader to Leader Summit. I had to deal instead with an article that I had written that it will soon likely be coming out over at the Daily Wire on a series of predictions that I'm making about the groups that are going to vie for power in the Middle East. And I said a couple of days ago, the only group with guns other than a group of communists from Albania, yeah, that has to do with Iran, and the Iranian regime itself are the Kurds. The Kurds are a group of Arabs in the Middle East who have been stabbed in the back, who have been used, who have been abused, like a lot of other groups in the Middle East, for time immemorial. Now, in the western portion of the Middle East, the Kurds are typically abused by the Turks. But in the eastern part of the Middle East, they are abused by the Iranians. So on the eastern edge of Iraq into the western edge of Tehran, I made the prediction that the Kurds, who happen to have a lot of bargain bin weapons they've picked up and amassed over the ages, would start doing a little bit of moving into Iran, because there happen to be a lot of Kurds in western Iran. So we're going to get to that. Before we do, we have to talk about the preceding news, because there is some very important stuff that happened right before rumors of a major Kurdistani move into Iran proper. Iran in its flailing, right? The ballistic missiles, their total capacity, the number of ballistic missiles they have, the number of suicide drones that they had, the number of people to launch those ballistic missiles and suicide drones, well, they are dwindling. And they're dwindling very, 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 very quickly. And the reason that they are dwindling very, very, very quickly is because on air, land, and sea, the United States and Israel, along with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, have established a pretty firm level of dominance over everything. Now, in response, that means that Iran has to get their missiles into the air lickety-split quick before they find themselves cuddling up with a Tomahawk, an AGM, an air-to-ground missile fired from an MQ-9 Reaper, perhaps, or a number of other pleasant surprises that might await them if they step outside without their sunscreen. And so that means there's not a lot of time to aim the missiles correctly. So instead of firing at very precise, precision, detailed, super GPS-locked coordinates, which they already struggled with quite fiercely, to be honest with you, on U.S. bases in particular regions, they have started blindly firing missiles and rockets, drones, towards allied, or at least former kind of brother, moderate-ish Muslim countries, and now also NATO partner Turkey. So a ballistic missile launched from Iran earlier today was moving toward Turkish airspace and was intercepted by NATO air and missile defenses over the eastern Mediterranean after passing over Iraq and Syria. The debris landed in Turkey's Hatay province with no injuries reported. This was the original clip over from Trey Yingst of Fox News, who's handling a lot of their reporting in the region.
This is breaking news. Turkey's Ministry of Defense says that an Iranian ballistic missile was launched toward their country, and it was shot down by NATO air defense systems, fragments of that missile landing in southern Turkey. This is a major development and the first time that a country like Turkey has received incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire.
Now, the question that is on everyone's mind, and I do mean everyone's mind regarding this particular strike, would this invoke Article 5? The answer to that question is yes. That's a simple question, right there, right up front, right here. No teasing from the title. When a power belligerently, either in defense or in offense, attacks one of the powers of NATO, Article 5 authority can be invoked. Now, the nation who is attacked has to do the invoking of Article 5. So it has to be Turkey. It has to be Erdogan who gets out there in front of the country and says, hey, we need the rest of NATO. We need French to come in, bring in their white sheets. We need the British to send all 5 warships they have off the coast of Cyprus. Yippee. We need the rest of NATO to get in here. We need Mark Carney to stop licking Winnie the Pooh's boots over in China. We need everybody over here. Call the A-team. the NATO team, to be precise. And then everyone would have to get involved. He's not going to invoke that power because it's really in Turkey's worst interest for Iran to be toppled here. Turkey is the quiet enjoyer of chaos in the Middle East. They have been for some time. And they finance just as many angles of the Muslim Brotherhood as the Iranians did. So it's doubtful that Article 5 would be invoked. Not that that would mean very much. We're already in the conflict. Now, this brings us over to the Iran and the Department of War press briefing on it today. Of course, Hegseth's opening statement got a lot of coverage. I would be remiss if we didn't play this.
I stand before you today with one unmistakable message about Operation Epic Fury. America is winning, decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy.
Now, I do have to contrast this with a statement from Ayatollah number 515, or Minister of Defense, that last week was a janitor and has been promoted 37 times. The man's gained rank incredibly quickly. No West Point ring could ever top such incredible rise through the field. And announced that there have been over 500 American soldiers dead. That American soldiers are lying dead all over the Middle East, everywhere. And the few numbers so far of those who we will mourn and we will honor, we will respect and we will remember here in this country, it's actually 500. It's the classic Iranian terror movement of the numbers are actually whatever number that's real times a kabligity-jillion. That's the official scientific term. And so the Iranians have 500 American deaths. Now, I'm going to be real. You wouldn't know them. I met them at summer camp. They're from Canada. They go to a different school, and they're very, very real. That's the Iranian idea here, as though they say, well, there's like 500 American. No, that's not the case. The United States and Israel, along with the intelligence and the assistance sorties from Saudi Arabia, the military support now from Qatar, not to mention a host of kick-em-up-butt style minor assistance, let's say, from the other Muslim regional powers other than Turkey, Jordan, for instance, some of the Lebanese assistance, finally against Hezbollah. Well, that's not exactly leaving a lot of wiggle room for Iran. And so Hegseth has quite a bit of reason here to be pretty proud of how the operation's going so far.
Under the direct command of President Trump, the War Department unleashed this operation early Saturday morning, just 4 days ago, which means we need to remember two things. First, we are only 4 days into this. Metrics are shifting, dust is settling, and more forces are arriving. It's very early. And as President Trump has said, we will take all the time we need to make sure that we succeed.
So far, very accurate. True. No questions, concerns on that particular side of things. Then we get to the part that the Babylon Bee pointed out today is really starting to cause the hyper-isolationist right, the libertarian right perhaps, and the left in this country a lot of problems. It's called the United States kicking tail on the world stage is really, really, really popular with Americans. By the way, do you know the reason why the Bush administration was able to start the whole nation building process? Do you know how that we were even able to begin that particular series of occupations? It's because the first 3 weeks of the Iraqi offensive were a lot like the explosive air domination footage that we saw here in this, only a little bit worse and a little less impressive because, again, we've been planning this one for a while and there are a different series of objectives than there were regarding the beginning of the Iraq War. Basically, you show Americans footage of Americans winning, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's on the international brokerage and trade stage, whether it's freeing hostages, whether it's throwing Maduro in the back of a van, whether it's bombing the crap out of American enemies. Americans love that. And if I was at home, I would play the eagle sound effect right now. Something Americans really enjoy. The most recent example of this would be Hegseth showing that Iranian boats, which now they are struggling to even get basic rowboats and floating refrigerators out into the Persian Gulf, because not only are the United States surface ships and the United States Air Force and the second largest air force in the world, the United States Navy, taking care of the boats, but also our submarines.
In the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters.
We never get submarine footage. We never get that. One of the longest standing jokes, if you ever talk to a naval officer who's a submariner, is how little they can tell you about anything. This is some of the only modern submariner footage of a strike of this magnitude that we have seen. And it's incredible.
Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win.
Yes, absolutely. Good. Lots of winning. Few American casualties. The United States plan to minimize the total number of casualties has been incorporating as many as possible empty buildings into the defense strategy. In other words, Iran is like, we're going to launch a bunch of missiles at your embassy, and essentially Marco Rubio comes out and says, okay, well, that building was empty. We're not telling you where we've gone since. And it's not like they can coordinate anything because we are striking them too quickly. Now, there were a couple of other jokes made that one of the ships sunk, the Soleimani, means that Trump got Soleimani twice. Huge success in the first 100 hours of the Operation Epic Fury timeline. But most importantly, and this is where I come to a bit of grief, a bit of grievance here, with some of the hyper-isolationist, too online horseshoe theory, Tucker Carlson right, and then the Rand Paul libertarians. There are consistent, multiple, documented pieces of evidence over the last couple of years that Iran has directly and through proxies attempted to assassinate the President of the United States and other officials. This includes President Trump. This includes President Biden. This includes several prominent senators and representatives in the House. And this includes officials running for office, for example, like Nikki Haley. I may hate her foreign policy. No other country gets to touch her. Absolutely not. Doesn't matter. And one of the individuals who has been killed in these particular strikes has been one of the officials from Iran who led the plot to assassinate President Trump.
The leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh.
Now, there are a lot of individuals on the social media sphere who are rewriting history. This deeply upsets me. Going, well, this is actually made up. This is just propaganda. There's no evidence. There's no evidence Iran tried to assassinate Trump. That's just pro-war propaganda. Okay, if you disagree with the President of the United States and his current plan in this current conflict, that's fine. That's cool. That's great. That's your right as an American. Hopefully, you will see particular elements of news that might change certain levels of opinion, not in a warmongering sense, but I'm sorry, the terrorist administration doesn't have a right not to have a JDAM shoved up his particular office's front window. But don't rewrite history and do the liberal, it never happened routine. The it's not happening and it's good that it is thing. Because before the argument was, well, there's no reason at all the United States should ever want to attack Iran. And then when the evidences have been brought forward, it's like, no, they have been doing this for 47 years. They've also tried to assassinate the President of the United States. Now it's, actually, there's no evidence they did that. The Biden prosecutors were just trying to make Americans hate Iran and love President Trump. Yeah, that was Biden's primary aim during his presidential campaign. Yes, that's some deep intelligent knowledge there. So I'm going to just very quickly, again, I'm giving you the evidence, the receipts here, as we do here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. In 2020, an Iranian lawmaker from Soleimani's hometown publicly offered a $3 million bounty to, quote, anyone who kills Trump, stating that it was to avenge Soleimani's death. That's according to Al Jazeera. Iranian leaders, including Supreme Leader Khamenei's office and officials, issued repeated vows of shattering revenge and promised death to Trump personally, with fatwas or religious rulings later issued by over 2,000 clerics in 2025 declaring that Trump's blood was halal, meaning it's morally acceptable to kill Trump. That was 2020 through to 2025. That's state incited planning and solicitation of assassination, folks. It just is. Ongoing Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps plots against the Trump era. Officials from 2022 to 2024, U.S. intelligence reports, local police reports. In 2022, Biden's DOJ charged an IRGC member with plotting to assassinate John Bolton and both Pompeo and Trump. Credible threats also against Brian Hook. In July 2024, intelligence warning of an imminent Iranian plot. That's right before the Butler rally. In 2024, the trial ongoing today, the Asif Merchant plot. It's an IRGC-linked plot that was foiled by the American government. Again, an attempted assassination plot against the President of the United States. Okay, folks, I'm going to level with you here for a second. If you disagree with stuff, that's fine. Don't rewrite history in order to do so. Say, look, I'm still really nervous about because how Iraq and Afghanistan came about. I am so nervous and against this particular course of action because I don't want us to end up in that place. I'm really skeptical. Matt Walsh, who I've argued a bit with before, he's been on the show, friend, has gone with that line on social media. I disagree with it. You have every right to have that particular perspective. I think it's good because it keeps the receipts flowing. Accountability is a good thing. Now, we'll move on from that a little bit. I do want to point out something that is also really, really cool. For the first time, long-range precision strike missiles, PERSMs, have been used in combat. I'm thrilled about this because my old West Point liaison officer was an arty guy and really, really, really wanted me to do artillery. I didn't want to do artillery. But anyway, long-range artillery looks really awesome. Here you go. Oh, I have the clip off screen. That's my fault. Let's fix that. We not have the long-range artillery ready to go? It's not playing, folks. It doesn't want to play the incredible long-range artillery. Well, we'll come back for it. Maybe the missile's still currently tracking in the air. Also, Tehran this morning, again, not looking good. Not looking good in Tehran.
What?
Exciting stuff indeed regarding the Operation Epic Fury. Now, this brings us again to a couple of issues regarding the rumors of Kurdistan and how involved they're getting, how involved they're not getting. There's all kinds of rumors flying around. There's official statements saying yes and no. There you go. There's the long-range shot. Look at that. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Kim Jong-un. That's what a real missile looks like, son. All right, anyway. Moving on to the Kurds, all right? The Kurdish situation. There was an initial report today by Fox News that the Iraqi Kurds had launched a ground offensive in Iran. This is according to a U.S. source. Here's where things get really, really sticky. While there are, and I checked, I'm going to level with you. I checked. There is a PMC, a private military company, that is currently in Western Iraq, that is, again, not in Eastern Iraq, Western Iraq, that does have information that there are Kurdi groups, the size of at least a battalion, and not a small number, that are preparing a possible invasion to liberate the western portion of Iran. Right into that valley between the two mountain ranges. Now, they haven't begun doing so yet, and this kind of cheesed Aziz Ahmad. Aziz Ahmad posted on X today, just at 5 p.m., not a single Iraqi Kurd has crossed the border. He criticized Jennifer Griffin over at Fox, saying this is patently false. And the reason is because essentially they're saying, what's the classic sibling thing? I'm not in your room. I'm not touching you. But they're like right about to. They're right outside the door. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. I mean, they're there. And I want them to hold off just for a few more days, maybe until my article gets published where I predicted that because the Kurds and then the ethnic group just to the south of them are the only two groups with guns, other than the communists out of Albania that call themselves Iranians. Long story. I think that's probably who the Trump administration, who according to the Wall Street Journal, is considering arming the Kurds with a bigger bargain bin of weapons. I'm going to need to see how that goes out before I endorse any particular action one way or the other. So before I get into too much trouble on my particular my particular ideas here, I do want to mention that the world's second largest shipping company, Maersk, has suspended all cargo bookings for the United Arab Emirates, for Saudi Arabia, for Bahrain, for Kuwait, for Oman, for Qatar, and Iraq. Now, again, there are a lot of people saying, oh, this is going to drive up prices. And yes, it will. The Trump administration is currently using one of its financial development task forces to personally ensure a lot of shipping in the Persian Gulf and the surrounding area around the Middle East. We're going to have to see how that goes. It's really imperative that the United States finishes securing the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the entire Persian Gulf with complete and total air and naval superiority as quickly as possible, so that shipping can resume. It's going to happen. This will, however, lower interest rates and insurance rates. Yeah, that's right. You get a 2-in-1 deal there, a little daily double, over the Gulf pseudo-permanently. Once that Gulf is secure and you don't have Iran threatening to close it or sanction it or cut it off every 15 seconds, it's going to dramatically reduce global security tensions in the region. You say, Tony, what evidence do you have for this? The South China Sea, the waters surrounding Indonesia, the entire freaking Indian Ocean, the North Atlantic around the Irish shenanigans in the second half of the 20th century. Whenever certain security issues are resolved permanently, the shipping rates in those areas decrease because now there's less risk to life. You know, every time the boat comes out, it's not a new season of Deadliest Catch. Guys kind of like to come back to their wives after long bouts at sea. Now, there's a couple of bits of commentary that I could share. We might get back to sharing later. Senator Kennedy of Louisiana on Hannity. I also think he had a stellar interview over with the guys over on the Ruthless podcast. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Fetterman, Betterman, as I call him, from Pennsylvania. We could get into that, but instead we are going to dive in now at 6:27 p.m. over to the biggest, most impactful domestic side news today. No, I'm not talking about Kristi Noem, taking off the earrings, going over to the house and fighting. I mean, for the first time ever, C-SPAN 3, conveniently located right next to ESPN 8, The Ocho, and Corncob TV. C-SPAN 3 aired Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who has now presided over more fraud scandals than any other governor in the state of this country. Wow. Imagine putting California and Illinois to shame. Way to go. That's some impressive stuff. Tim Walz, who's presided over just about every single fraud case that you can imagine. And Keith Ellison, the race-baiting and fraud-endorsing Attorney General of Minnesota, went before the House Oversight Committee, and I saw something. I'm amazed. Guys, we've talked about this before. Listen to your lawyers. If you're ever under investigation, if you're ever in trouble, listen to your lawyer, and the very first piece of advice they are likely to give you is shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. As Mark Twain said, better to keep silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt. And Tim Walz, with his weird form of hubris and arrogance that he has for no reason whatsoever, he's not popular. He's not good at this. It's not impressive. He goes in front of the House, and they're like, we're going to rake you over the coals. So instead of doing, believe it or not, what Hillary Clinton did, even Hillary Clinton knows, you go, I don't recall. I'm in a Pokemon Go back home. I don't recall. And even Bill Clinton, I don't recall. And also, how's it going? Even they know how to do that. Tim Walz, no, not at all. So first of all, we get Representative Jim Jordan taking it to Walz over the Somali fraud numbers. Just a really good way to start this particular section. Check it out.
The payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you, and Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And I
asked that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously, it wouldn't stop the payments. Then they're restarted a month later.
Hey, that's a pretty good question. Happen to notice there were a lot of these. You claim to be Mr. Fraud. We've arrested people. We've gone out and we have found wrongdoers of the law. And I have sent out the troops to arrest them. Donald Trump didn't do that. And so I'm really great. Every single time he speaks, he's like trying to impersonate one of the frogs from Alice in Wonderland that scare her. That's Tim Walz. And it's a good question from Jim Jordan as well. You don't usually get these in House committees. Usually by now, someone in the back is shouting Jerry. Someone's picking up a folding chair and handing it to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's an incredible time.
What was the reason for restarting the payments?
my understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
Now,
why did you, who was in charge of the disbursement of these funds in your administration, why did you, Tim Walz, decide to release the payment? It was our understanding the agency said that the court said that the other court told them that Congress had told the court agency and the agency's court. Dude, if you're playing telephone and your own answer, you lost.
it was false, wasn't it? You repeated that. You said that, didn't you? You said that's why the reason you said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is, because the court did something that I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying.
Oh, no. Oh, I love it. This new timeline we have where arrogant fools get out there and say things like, I mean, Qatar's out there like arresting Mossad agents. And then Qatar says, no, Tucker Carlson is retarded. Now here we have Tim Walz going, we stopped the payments because we started the payments again because the courts told us we did. And the courts don't have press secretary. At least I sure hope they don't. Lord in heaven, please keep press secretaries away from the courts. They released a statement saying, Tim Walz is making this up. The dude got out the coloring book. He ain't staying in the lines.
This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false.
Oh, gee. Oh, jeepers. Oh, wow. I'm almost shocked. Now, we had a little bit of theater. Don't worry. I think that I'm just going to play you boring things here. We did get Representative Nancy Mace, who she had a good question in a minute, so, don't go after her too hard. We did the initial little bit of dancing where she's like, what is a woman? Again, it's something to hit them on. I don't think it's as useful. It is theater. Now, I enjoy the theater. Who does not among us, But when Nancy Mace asks Tim Walz, what is a woman? All right, well, we'll play it anyway.
What is a woman? Have you learned that lesson? Do you know what a woman is?
I'm the governor of Minnesota, Congressman.
Do you know what a woman is?
I'm not here to be your prop for your obsession.
So
I
if you
taught
can't
middle school
define
your
what
obsession.
a woman is, you certainly can't define what fraud is. If you can't even define what a woman is, you can't define fraud.
Sorry about the audio mismatch there. I had a little corruption problem on that clip. Good question, though, either way. Well, hey, I just can't help but notice here. Do you know what a woman is? And then his answer, all he has to do is say, yeah. And then that's it. Instead, he goes, I'm the governor of Minnesota. I'm okay. Thanks. And then they get into I'm not here to be a prop for you. Well, she does get to the point and asks about the autism spending, because as we move through the fraud investigations, it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Minnesota is just an untreated staph infection at this point.
How much money was spent on autism in Minnesota in 2017, Governor?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, Congresswoman.
Did you prepare for this hearing today? Did you do any preparation
I take
for this hearing
Congress
today?
seriously.
And you've seen the numbers about autism fraud in Minnesota. So we're going to do some Minnesota math with you today, okay?
Oh boy, it's time for some quality luring.
Are you ready? How much money was spent on 2017 for autism in Minnesota? How much?
I don't know. I wasn't the governor.
Okay. Did you not just say that you prepared for this hearing today? $1 million, okay? A quick Google search or using your AI could tell you $1 million was spent. How much money was spent on autism in Minnesota in 2024?
I don't have the number in front of me.
Now, we've gone from, I wasn't the governor, so I don't know, to, I don't have the number in front of me. Okay, again, on fraud, totally fine. I don't think everyone needs to have every answer when they go to a committee hearing, but she's going somewhere.
As
Were you governor in 2024?
I was, but I'm not the head
so
of
your
HHS.
excuse before that you didn't know what 2017 autism numbers were because you were not governor, and today you can't answer the numbers about 2024 as governor, and you still said you prepared for this hearing today. It's unbelievable. $343 million was spent in 2024. What percent increase is that from 1 million to 343 million? What percentage increase is that?
I'm not here to be your prop. Go ahead and tell me.
Are you governor of Minnesota or not?
Yes, I am. I'm
Okay,
not.
well,
I'm
when
not
I'm
a prop
governor of
for a
South
member of
Carolina,
Congress.
you can sure.
Okay, so you don't get to have us both ways. So everything, including Nancy, by the way, in these committee hearings, they are props. The whole thing is theater. These committees, ever since they put television cameras into committees, all of the people on the panels and all of the people who go to testify all want to be pundits. They want my job. They want to get in front of the camera and they want to impress everybody. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some really great slam dunks. And I like the evidence showing, because what she's saying is true. How did you go in a few years from spending $1 million on autism support to spending $340-some million on autism support? That didn't raise any red flags for you? You weren't like, gee, wow, we went from $1 million to $300.5 million. 330, 340, 350 million a year. It shouldn't, again, someone out there, again, given earlier fraud accusations that he was suppressing with the auditor in the state legislature as a legislative appointed position. Tim Walz went after that individual, but instead we're going to argue, well, I'm not here to be your prop. You can't give a little quip, say, well, I wasn't the governor in 2017. And then, as if he didn't know where she was going, she wasn't going to lecture him just about 2017 numbers, that she's obviously going into 2024 numbers. Like, it's where she's going to go. She's going to point out the numbers are rising. He walked into his own trap. Incredible. And as one of the comments pointed out, Uniani said, yeah, thank God this man is not the vice president of the United States. Now, I do want to get to two things here that I think are incredible. So one is a comment from Representative Comer on fraud rates to Attorney General Ellison. Really great stuff from Comer. Great stuff from the chair here.
At any point during your tenure, did you tell state agencies to stop payments due to credible fraud allegations? Yes or no?
Sir, we prosecuted over 300 people in the Medicaid fraud.
Uh-oh. Why, Jim, I don't think that was a yes or a no. I think that was evading the question.
Area.
300, I would predict is a drop in the bucket, but you've never said to stop payments. That's
it's one of the highest rates in the country, sir.
Well, you have one of the highest fraud rates in the country in Minnesota.
And the room laughed. And it's like, okay, well, okay, hear me out. Okay, I know people were drowning, and I didn't shut off the water, but also our lifeguards rescued more people than like anybody there. Sure, we were pumping more water in and more people were starting to drown, but our lifeguards were working 36 hours a day. It was just real incredible. I've never seen so many Band-Aids put on arms before. Incredible, amazing, extatulent. So beautiful stuff from Comer there. Representative Lauren Boebert did get a pretty good dig in on asking about Americans who have been killed by illegals in Minnesota.
Governor Walz, do you know who Victoria Eileen Harwell is?
I do not believe I do.
What about American Mafalda Tyer?
I don't believe I do.
There. These are Minnesota women who were brutally killed by illegal aliens in your state. You don't know who they are, so I would also assume that you did not attend their vigils or speak out to their families when they were brutally killed by illegal aliens.
I'm not familiar with both of these, no, Congresswoman.
No, just the hard-hitting CNN ones.
Okay. I'm again, an important question to ask. Gotcha. I hear you. I don't think it maybe is as effective to, again, hold accountability here. There are two, however, that are incredible. One comes from Representative Brandon Gill. One comes from Representative Perry on the driver's licenses to illegals. This is a critical issue. It's very, very, very important. And it is one of the biggest mistakes in this particular administration that we have not clamped down on this sooner or forced states to clamp down on them sooner.
And but he was licensed in your state under your law that you signed about a year and a half ago.
Every day we give licenses and people speed. So we ticket them and try and stop that. What I'm telling you is I don't understand the connection between
He's here illegally. He can't read. And he got a license under your provisions, and he's driving all across the country, imperiling everybody else.
Now, this is a very significant issue that Democrats cannot seem to wrap their mind around. The idea that maybe, just maybe, if the individual can't speak English, they can't read road signs, they shouldn't be driving, especially not commercial vehicles. Now, they shouldn't be here in the first place, but they especially, if they can't speak the language and take a driver's test and pass in English, they should not be operating commercially. You say, well, why? What does it matter? I mean, after all, the stop sign is the same shape, isn't it? And that means, red means stop, green means go, yellow means pull an illegal U-turn. Everyone knows that. Here's why. Guys, I don't know if you know this. Not a lot of cops in Kansas speak Hindi. Huh? Not a lot of police officers outside of Fargo speak in Farsi. You know what I'm saying? I don't know a lot of Atlanta police officers chatting in Mandarin or Vietnamese. You know what I'm saying? So if the cops need to stop somebody, the cop can't speak to them, that's a problem. Also, it just so happens on a lot of these traffic signs, there are these words written on them or road notices. Big LED boards with blinking yellow lights that say, you need to merge because the road's ending over here. And the semi-drivers are and right on through. And it ends up killing Americans. Oh, it's really insensitive to make that kind of an impression, Tony. Yeah, well, it's really insensitive to continue sacrificing Americans to those who cannot speak the language, who are given responsibility because some trucking company wants cheap, illegal, essentially slave labor. And then they don't have to worry about it if they get caught for using meth on the road. Oh, who cares? We'll just hire another one. I really am truly disgusted that right now the modus operandi for the left continues to be, and a lot of moderate Republicans, shout out to Tom Tillis here, pretending away that the current best move regarding illegal immigrants and CDLs is just to ignore it and say it's totally fine and it's wonderful and it's good and everyone's loving it. Absolutely not. Now, from Representative Brandon Gill, had a phenomenal series of questioning with him, but I would be remiss if I didn't actually play a comment from Democrat Representative Yasmin Ansari of Arizona's 3rd. She really hated that they were having this hearing whatsoever, and so she threw a big pouty fit about it. So obviously, we gotta hear it.
Recognizes Ms. Ansari.
Mr. Chairman, it's outrageous that this is what we're choosing to spend our time on the Oversight Committee. At the first one...
Fraud?
At the first one, yes, fraud, because let's talk about fraud.
Well, yeah, we're going to talk about fraud. That's what they're here to do. Minnesota has the highest rate of fraud in the country. There are more fraud investigations in the state of Minnesota than any other state or commonwealth in the country. There are more federal investigations into the fraud in Minnesota regarding regarding state officials than any other fraud investigation into state officials in any other state combined. Yeah, they're going to bring and talk about fraud. It's the Oversight Committee. Guess what? They're supposed to do oversight. Yeah. But, Representative Ansari struggles to tie her shoes unless they're Velcro. So, moving aside, last but not least, Representative Brandon Gill, who I believe does the best in these committees because he doesn't focus as much on the theater as much as he does smacking people with receipts. CVS should sponsor Representative Brandon Gill because that man utilizes receipts far better than anyone I've ever seen in my entire life. Representative Brandon Gill to Governor Tim Walz on racism and Islamophobia that Tim Walz was throwing. Remember, I think everyone talking about this and their white supremacy and their Islamophobia, that kind of a thing. Here's Gill grilling him over it.
Yep, and would you agree that as governor, ultimately you're responsible if tax dollars are defrauded?
Yes, I would agree.
Yep. Would you also agree that calling somebody racist is a serious accusation?
Uh-oh.
If they are racist, I think it's probably
I'm asking
accurate.
you, is that a serious accusation to make?
I like that. Immediately it was like, oh no, I have wandered into the wilderness and now I am lost.
About somebody.
I think it's just an observation of reality.
All right, well, let's go there. Is it racist for a government official to identify fraud?
No.
No. Is it Islamophobic?
To identify fraud?
To identify fraud?
No, I don't believe it would be.
How come multiple whistleblowers have said that your administration told them not to say anything about widespread fraud across multiple agencies because doing so would be considered racist or Islamophobic?
I can't speak to it because it's not anything I would say.
Well, that's what your administration has said and has told whistleblowers, and as you just testified, the buck stops with you. That's what you stated in your in your statement whenever you announced you weren't running again.
Gill also then proceeded to dive into a couple of particular instances in which individuals who, by the way, were Democrats and appointed by the Walz administration were called racist and called Islamophobic and a bunch of other, fun little adjectives and nouns by Tim Walz. Because again, they as Democrats had recognized and identified fraud, especially from the Somali community. So excellent stuff out of that particular committee. I do believe that by the end of this administration, there will likely be an arrest made regarding either Governor Tim Walz or Attorney General Keith Ellison. I'm dead serious. The reason I'm dead serious, the evidence in this case is so insurmountable that there are major Democrats across the country that are no longer providing any kind of guidance or defense for Walz and Ellison. One of the biggest examples of this is the DNC. From the inside of the DNC, Ken Martin has become eerily quiet. The former chair of the Minnesota Democrat and FarmerLabor.com party, whatever, that Ken Martin has stopped issuing any guidance on Tim Walz or Keith Ellison. That ship is sinking like it's in the Persian Gulf. It's time to jump. And so the DNC is doing so from the Tim Walz administration in full. Now, speaking of jumping ship from things, we're watching a very weird series of elections pan out regarding the Texas and the North Carolina primaries yesterday, as well as some special elections in Louisiana that did not go in Republicans' favor. But we got to get to these primary things first because bigger stuff, bigger Senate things. State Representative James Talarico won the Democratic nomination. He got over 50% of the vote. Jasmine Crockett got 46% of the vote. And Ahmad Hassan, who looks like Shri Tanadar, seriously, the Whigs, guys. The Whigs. Come on now. The Whigs. It hurts. All right. Got the whole 30,000 whole votes. Exciting stuff. But anyway, Jasmine Crockett lost. She's very, very grumpy. She isn't happy because she ran this I'm strong and everyone's racist campaign, which, as we know, is just the number one ultimate incredible way to win any election. So, of course, Crockett gets out there and claims that people cheated in the primary.
Fred has already stated, we encourage each and every one of you to remain resilient. We cannot allow this type of behavior to be rewarded.
Okay, guys, level with you here. You're going to encourage people to respond to accused fraud or cheating. All right, you're going to do that. This is your plan. Getting out there and encouraging people to be something. Encourage them to be persistent. Encourage them to be annoying. Encourage them to be circumspect. Encourage them to keep their head on a swivel. Encourage them to do, etc. All these things. Resilient, though. Encouraging people to be resilient. Okay. Stand there and take it, is her advice to people that she says were cheated out of her election. I know that Jasmine Crockett isn't exactly a wordsmith, but every time I'm told that her amazing lawyer background means that she's some kind of super ultra genius, I point to this crap.
Each and every one of you to remain resilient. We can
remain flatulent, I before E, as a neighbor in way.
Not allow this type of behavior to be rewarded because
reward it.
So long as they know that they can win, even if it means cheating, then they will continue to do it. So I am asking you, I am begging you to make sure that you go ahead and figure out where it is that you are supposed to vote, stand in line, wait in line.
Okay, that's great. That's some real stellar advice. Thank you very much, Jasmine Crockett. Exciting. Now, she just had a rough time because James Talarico, he came out and he pulled a sneaky. So his campaign made the decision to get in front of God and everybody and announce that Trump was trying to cancel him from going on the air with Stephen Colbert. Because James Talarico is trying the Beto O'Rourke or Colin Allred strategy of having it both ways. Now, having it both ways works really great online and really great in the media. Super great. The problem is that there's a lot of these phone things around everywhere these days. And these cool phone things, well, they record stuff. And so when you go out and you try to be the super progressive, I'm going to stand against Chuck Schumer and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to throw punches and I'm not going to let Cory Booker stand in my way. I'm going to be super radical. And then you go in front of the rest of the country and go, well, I'm kind of moderate, like white bread and mayonnaise. And also I'm a Christian and I love guns too. And also, you know, we just got to get together and sing a little kumbaya. It turns out that during the campaign season, your opponent's going to go, here's him being a crazy radical, and he's lying to you about it. And then their support drops from like 55 to 35 in 2 weeks. Say, Tony, how do you know that? Every Democrat Senate campaign they lost because of this in like the last at least 3 elections. At least 3 election cycle, every one. And a lot of gubernatorial elections too, for that matter. So here we go. I mean, all right, we're going to try this again. Here we go. So now we're getting out. Now that he's won, here we go. Mr. supposedly moderate, who's super Mr. Christian man, doesn't even really know what Christianity is, it seems. But anyway, we'll let him say it.
I believe Christianity points to the truth. I also think other religions of love point to the same truth. I think of different religious traditions as different languages.
Yes. Yes. The Christian language. It's not like Christ ever said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. It's not like there are verses like, there is none other gospel among men preached under heaven, given among men, whereby we must be saved. It's not as though the Bible makes it very, very, very clear, thou shalt have no other gods before me. You know, it's not as though, I mean, again, you know, hey, I mean, at least when you're talking about the differentiation between Judaism and Christianity, Judaism is that they believe in Jehovah, they just do not believe that Christ is the Messiah. And then there is the effort of convincing them that, yes, the Messiah has come. He's died for our sins, and that effort to be made. But like talking about all the other religions of the world that don't believe in God or Christ in any way, shape, or form, pretending, well, they're also the same truth. And it's like, you know, it's just all about like love, man. And I don't like believe any of this, but you know, like if like, you know, you pray and you love and stuff, you know, that's what it's all about, man. It's all the same.
Christianity points to the truth. I also think other religions of love point to the same truth. I think of different religious traditions as different languages. So you and I could sit here and debate what to call this cup, and you could call it a cup in English, you'd call it something else in Spanish.
But you know what it is? You know, even if the word is different, the word isn't cup, you know what? It's still a cup! There are a lot of different names for Jesus Christ. He's still Jesus Christ, bud. You claim to be a Christian. What is this discount? Even Joel Osteen's got theology better than this. My goodness.
And French, but we are all talking about the same reality. I believe Jesus Christ reveals that reality to us. But
as what? As what?
I also think that other traditions reveal that reality in their own ways with their own symbol structures. And
No. The people of Islam do not believe that Christ is the Messiah and the divine Son of God. That's why they're not compatible. Because that would make Christ a liar. That's a no-no. Not difficult for those of us who are genuine Christians to figure out. But again, if you thought his theology was going to get any better, Mr. Super Christian centrist Democrat he apparently is. Remember, he's to you, he's the centrist. He's with the people. He's on the 80-20 issues of something. Maybe we got Senator John Fetterman 2.0. Senator Federico out here in Texas, y'all. Well, here you go. Some more theology for Mr. Centrist Christian down-home preacher boy Democrat.
Trans children are God's children.
So far, fine. Yes, all people on this earth are indeed those who are made in the image of God. Yes, agree. So far, I'm fine with this.
Made in God's own image.
So far, yes.
There's nothing wrong with them.
Not true. Not true. Those with mental illnesses are in fact ill. That has nothing to do with their being made in the image of God. Oh, well, we can't cure this person of the serious heart defect they have because God made them this way. So therefore, you know, I mean, yeah, sure, he gave us the skills and, of course, incorporated medical tradition and in scripture and throughout human history. But, well, you know, this is a stupid argument. No one believes this.
Nothing at all. They are perfect. They are beautiful. And they are sacred. Bullying children is immoral.
Affirming children to cut off their own breasts and penis is immoral. Stuffing hormones, not the hormone that their body isn't producing enough of. Not giving a child that lacks testosterone, but giving a child that lacks testosterone estrogen. That's cruel. That's disgusting. Now, one more, just because, I just personally, I really enjoy when he gets up and says the extra dumbest of the dumb here. He also believes a few more things about the trans community here.
Before we go further, I want to acknowledge that our trans community needs abortion care too. Defending trans Texans is something we have to do every day.
So he's gone on the record consistently, repeatedly saying that he believes God is non-binary and that trans people need abortion. Yes, centrist Democrat James Talarico, ladies and gentlemen. Exciting stuff. You ready? Are you excited? You pumped for this beautiful age? Now, as we send the radio and TV crews off for the evening, we send you guys out. We say goodbye and continue on the live stream for a little bonus tonus. I did want to share some stuff that is actually pretty good from today. So there was a press briefing at the White House about energy and AI. These are two major drivers of the economy now. The tech sector is incorporating tons of AI. It is, like some may have said, kind of like Microsoft Office, kind of changing the entire corporate sector. AI is also changing a lot of the information and the service sectors. So the President of the United States is putting a lot of people ahead of developing better energy options, as in abundant options, not windmills, so that we can actually advance technologically. A lot of the things require more energy, so you can either say, don't build any of the tech because I don't want to touch my energy, or you can say, okay, if you're going to move in, provide your own mini reactor and be a net provider of energy to the community. And that seems to be the way the Trump administration is moving. But he did start off the roundtable today, the AI and energy roundtable, by letting everyone know that nobody really wants to be a leader in Iran because they end up dead. Funny from the president here.
Their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be a leader, they end up dead. And it's an amazing thing that's taking place before your eyes, because for 47 years we were pushed around and we shouldn't have been. And I think I can say, and you see it as well as I do, you see the tremendous progress that's being made. Their missiles are being wiped out rapidly. Their launchers are being wiped out.
This reminds me from the president here, just this clip in particular. I want to issue a slight clarification. I misspoke. To be clear, when talking about the Kurdistan, when we're talking about the Kurds, when talking about the other two minority ethnic groups inside of Iran, not the Persians, but it is important to frame. They are in Arabia. They are not of the Arab ethnicities. They are one of the original Mesopotamian High Plains cultures. So sorry, while I was doing that clip, thought it might be, rather useful to point out. The Kurds aren't Arabs. I was describing the geologic origin. I didn't mean they're ethnically Arab. So on that particular side and line there, the president of the United States also, again, getting a little bit of flack for this, but very much the president's way of doing so. Also, so far, throwing kind of a rating on the war. Again, just useful stuff here.
This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. And we're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military in the world by far. And that was a tremendous threat to us for many years. 47 years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world. And I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. And if we didn't terminate the worst deal, one of the worst deals ever made, the Obama nuclear deal, I call it the Obama nuclear deal, where he gave everything to Iran, including a nuclear weapon. It was a road to a nuclear weapon. Bad things would have happened 4 years ago, because they would have had a weapon 4 years ago if I didn't terminate that deal.
Correct regarding the JCPOA. The president, very accurate here. Now, let's get to some of this AI energy stuff, because again, this is where all of the economy, all of the energy sector is going. we do need to come up with ways to lighten the load on the American energy infrastructure and modernize. Because Germany, well, I should say before Friedrich Merz about 2 weeks ago, who suddenly looked at China and thought, oh, dang. Well, the United States doesn't really want to go the way of cold Europe, having to go to Russia with an empty cup begging for oil or begging for any kind of energy, or forcing Americans to pay corporate interests in development. So if a large organization, large business, large tech center wants to move in and establish something on your land, the president's making it clear they should bring their own energy. You know, you've got a really big garden hose, you should be the one to fill it.
Under this new agreement, big tech companies are committing to fully cover the cost of increased electricity production required for AI data centers, and that would be prices for American communities will not go up, but in many cases will actually come down and very substantially. Because, you know, the data centers, and you people are so big, you're the biggest in the world, but they've developed a little bit of a bad public, they need some PR help, because people think that if a data center goes in, their electricity prices are going to go up, and that's not happening. It's not going to happen. And for the areas where it did happen, it won't happen anymore, because they never had this alternative. It's actually going to mean the prices come down. You're going to see how badly they want. Some centers were rejected by communities for that, and now I think it's going to be just the opposite. This means that the tech companies and the data centers will be able to get the electricity they need, all without driving up electricity costs for consumers. This is a historic win for countless American families, and will also make our electricity grid stronger and more resilient than ever before. So that's part of it. It's going to be strengthened up, and they're going to be getting a lot of excess electricity from the data centers where they build their own plants. They're going to be creating their own electricity. We're pleased to be.
I mean, yeah, that good plan. These kinds of policies, the deregulation, which keeps a lot of small businesses and individuals in a place where they are more freely able to develop, and that also make sure that when large industrial development happens, that it doesn't crush everything around it and force essentially only the most local group to fund everything else. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna level with you. So far, I'm a pretty big fan of this style of policy. And as you see, those over on the left side of the aisle standing against this, there is a runway for the GOP this year. Now, a lot of people have decided already, right here, right now, it's all over, it's all done, you know, everything is just in a terrible place, and everything's, you know, the Democrats are going to sweep through blue waves everywhere. Arrogance before a midterm is a very, very, very bad decision. But alas, now I think we should pivot just briefly over from, you know, some of the futzing and scutzing over on the arguments regarding the midterm and kind of AI energy stuff. A couple of updates from the rest of the country. A little extra bonus quick news here. And then, you know, maybe we'll slide in for a smidgen of mail time here. You know, a little bit of questions here. So if you guys have a question here, something for the mail time side of the show, go ahead and throw that in over in the comments section or over on TonyKinnett.com. And we'll get all of that ready to go. So that aside, want to get to some of the minor stories from the day. Well, sort of minor stories. The Supreme Court has unanimously ruled against shielding migrants from deportation simply by claiming persecution. So there was a lawsuit that was thrown out there suggesting that if you run into the country and you claim sanctuary, I'm a migrant who is being persecuted, that the government of the United States has to keep you here. They have to keep you here, and you can't deport them if they claim they're going to be persecuted. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 today, funnily enough, the opinion by Justice Jackson, that federal appeals courts have to defer to immigration agencies. You say, why are the courts being cut out? Because constitutionally, immigration is supposed to be a whole sole function of the executive branch of government. The judicials aren't really supposed to have a part in it. Immigration courts are not an original framing in the U.S. Constitution. They're not. If you're not supposed to be here, then you don't have any judicial rights in the United States. There is no magical, extra, super duper courtroom due process that's allotted to individuals constitutionally who are here illegally. And there's really no brushing up against that. Now, a lot of this is going to be hammered out in some asylum cases. The idea that, well, my evidence is my own, and isn't my word good enough to say that I'm a migrant under persecution? A lot of this is going to be hammered out further, I would say further, in some of the upcoming immigration cases. But, still is interesting. Other kind of things to keep your eye on. 2/3 of Cuba have been hit by an electricity blackout. Now, the cause is not yet known. Most likely it's because Cuba's just run out of energy altogether. They have no oil. They have no nothing. And so the very proud and boastful communist regime from El Presidente appears to have just completely run out of any bargaining chips whatsoever. Venezuela is certainly not doing it. However, Venezuela has, in the last quarter, its entire economy has grown 7%. Incredible. It turns out that stopping the seizing of American businesses and opening them because the United States came in and, plucked Maduro right out of the area. Yeah, I guess, it can do wonders for an economy. Really cool stuff there. The Senate has rejected the War Powers Act today. Also something I think that's rather interesting there. So in a flip vote situation here, there's kind of a trade. So Rand Paul voted with the Democrats to say, no, President Trump has to stop the Iran strike, Operation Epic Fury. And then John Fetterman of Pennsylvania sided with the GOP. So the motion failed in the Senate to halt the president's war powers in at least carrying out the strikes so far with regard to Iran, which again already is turning out to be a remarkably less expensive conflict than many were promised. So again, that side of the news, interesting stuff. There's one other extra piece I want to bring to you before we talk about some of the illegal immigration enforcement and ICE, and it has to do with the CDLs, the commercial driver's licenses, as well as the Delilah law, which has been introduced by Indiana Senator Jim Banks. I saw something on the road, so you'll recall, if you've watched the show for any time at all, that a lot of these illegal truckers going through various major transportation hub states that are causing a lot of these accidents, they're red states. And these red states, on a lot of these interstate sides, have weigh stations, checkpoints for semis, for shipping and freight vehicles, in order to check individuals for compliance with Department of Transportation regulations and state laws. And I asked, after one of the last horrific illegal immigrant semi-accidents in Indiana, of which I have to choose from, that maybe it was time we started activating the weigh stations and we started having individuals' commercial driver's licenses and their immigration statuses checked at these weigh stations. And believe it or not, we are actually seeing that take place. Now, I received a comment from the state government in Indiana that maybe individuals had tuned into the show and kind of kicked some of this stuff forward. Others have said they were already working on it. I'm not going to claim any kind of credit for this, but I will say that when I was traveling to Wisconsin today, when I was on I-65 north out of Indianapolis, and I got just shy of Lowell on the way past Lafayette up towards Chicago, the weigh station on I-65 south on the opposite, that weigh station was active and every single semi on the interstate was stopped. And so I did what any weirdo with a CB antenna on his Toyota Corolla would do. I turned on the CB and I opened up the channel and started asking what those individuals were checking at that weigh station before I got out of range. And again, take this with a grain of salt. That's why I've shoved this all the way back to this portion of the show. The reports that I got back is that they were checking the CDLs and the immigration statuses of individuals in the vehicles there at the weigh station. That should be happening at every weigh station in this country. That is excellent. To the state government of Indiana, huge, huge kudos. I am thrilled to see it. If the report from the semi-drivers over the CB is true. Again, I'm putting that on there, but if that's true, praise. And also to Sean Duffy's Department of Transportation for assisting states in carrying this kind of stuff out. Good. That is an excellent thing, and it needs to continue. Now, unfortunately, state Democrats in many of the different blue states and purplish states are trying to keep other apparatuses from coming into contact at all with those who have served in the Department of Homeland Security or Immigration Customs Enforcement. And this brings us over to a conversation that I got to have on an update with this right before I left from our Tyler O'Neill at the Daily Signal. He's our senior editor. Excellent, excellent work following a case in Colorado. I'm going to let him break it down for you here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere. Well, here on the domestic side of things, we go over to Tyler O'Neill, our senior editor at the Daily Signal, covering a series of stories, various states attempting to pre-thwart those who worked not just in immigration customs enforcement, but perhaps in some areas the entire Department of Homeland Security from becoming law enforcement of any kind in their state. The latest example of this is over in Colorado. Tracking the story, our Tyler O'Neill. Man, this sounds like a bit more bizarre of a case than perhaps some of the other states just doing their hemming and hawing. Break it down for us.
Yeah, I think it's very aggressive and egregious. What we have in this bill, it's a specific bill that, to be fair, it hasn't passed the House or the Senate in Colorado yet, but it's championed by this very radical, actually Iranian American, very outspoken member of the Democratic Socialists of America, Yara Zokaie, who, if we should all remember, compared concerned parents to the Ku Klux Klan last year in a bill attacking parental rights and championing transgender ideology. Now she's pushing a bill that would essentially say, and actually, no, it directly says, that if you ever worked for ICE or CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, you cannot be approved by the POSD. This is a board that sets all the standards for peace officers in Colorado. And so this bill would say that it would require the board to automatically fail anyone who previously worked for ICE or Customs and Border Protection. And of course, it isn't all of DHS just yet, but if that's, if they're automatically disqualifying anyone who worked in those two agencies, that's an extremely shocking position to take. This would bar any federal immigration officer from those two agencies from becoming a state or local police officer in the entire state of Colorado. So if you want, yeah.
No, it's fine. Finish your sentence. I want to ask you a question.
So if you want to leave CBP or ICE, or if you had previously worked for ICE, 5-10 years ago, and you wanted to get a job in Colorado law enforcement, you would be preempted from doing so. You'd be prevented by the government and by this bill.
So along those lines, this particular board, this organization per se that has to approve, you said Colorado peace officers. Does this include local law enforcement or just the state trooper equivalent in the state of Colorado? Who's involved in this, having to go before this board for approval? And if you know, how often do they have to go for the approval of this board?
It's all law enforcement officers in Colorado, both state and local. And you have to be approved before you start working. I don't know how frequently you have to get it re-upped. But essentially what this would do is just prevent, and this is what Yara Zokaie has said. And I think this clip really explains it all. She specifically says she's speaking to ICE officers, and here's the message that she has for them. In my home state, I remember I grew up in Colorado. I remember when it was a reliably red state. And yes, it had a very strong libertarian streak that said, you're never going to, engage in our rights and our freedoms. You're not going to weaken those. And now it's just gone off the deep end. Every single radical thing we hear from the Democrats, it seems like Colorado has not only signed up, but also tried to make it illegal if you disagree.
What's the makeup of the Colorado state legislature at the moment? Are we seeing kind of a broader support for this, or are there some perhaps moderate Democrats that would at least pushback against this? Are we expecting an amendment process? What are you hearing from inside the state legislature? I know you have a couple of contacts in there.
Yeah, both houses have Democratic majorities. That said, there is a chance that this could get amended or blocked. There have been a few Democrats who will stand on principle and not go with their party on some of these radical measures. But we just saw a similar bill pass the Democrat majority state Senate in Colorado. And this is a bill that allows people to sue ICE for alleged constitutional violations. And this is another thing, I reached out to DHS and they said, these Democrats know that what they're doing is illegal, but they're pushing for it anyway. And, the head of the Republicans in the House told me essentially the same thing we've been seeing across the country, which is that these bills will pit Colorado directly in direct confrontation with the federal government. And this is an echo that I've been seeing over and over again, where we essentially have Democrats trying to nullify federal law in a similar way that echoes the Confederacy in the Civil War. That's not to say that they are, signing up for slavery here, but what they are doing is they're saying there are these laws on the books that were passed by Congress, signed by the president. We have not changed these laws on the federal level, but we are going to do everything we can, not only to not enforce them, but to block federal officials from enforcing them. And you get these situations like in Minnesota, where Governor Tim Walz effectively said he was going to have the National Guard go toe-to-toe against ICE. And this is the thing, that these Democrats are opposing Trump so much that it's driving them off the deep end and actually leading to the circumstances where it's not impossible to imagine a sort of civil war confrontation here. Not to say that we're on the verge of Fort Sumter, but we're seeing in many cases the Democrats fighting tooth and nail to prevent the enforcement of immigration law.
I think that it's definitely a cause for concern. There are, again, additional questions that must be raised as to whether individuals can legally be automatically denied on a panel based on legislation and employment history for a law enforcement agency without any kind of character investigation. I'm sure that we'll bring any kind of particular legal challenges, maybe, if, God forbid, this bill makes it out of committee and then out of the House and Polis signs it, for example. Tyler O'Neill, Daily Signal senior editor, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of an outlook on this.
Thanks.
All right, before we leave, I did want to finish a thought. I didn't get to finish a thought on Venezuela. Regarding the 7% in Q4. So in Q4, the Venezuelans have now announced through Delcy Rodriguez's administration that year over year, the Venezuelan economy had rebounded 7% in the Q4 of last year, which is rather strange. It's a rather strange number to cite. There wasn't a lot of evidence for the central bank to do so. But after the capture of Maduro, again, while we do not have the Q1 numbers out yet officially, the local firm Eco Analytica projects a 15.2% real GDP growth for 2026, 20.8% for oil-related gross domestic product, 13.9% growth for non-oil, driven by investment shifts and a new economic style. So the anticipation is that Venezuela could see an average annual growth of 12% through 2029 due to slicing a lot of socialist policies and moderating. And if you're not going to steal the businesses of Americans, then American business is actually investing in Venezuela. So what it appears is that while the Venezuelan administration might be trying to suggest, the economy was already recovering, and that's why the 7% growth is so good, according to their central bank, they haven't provided anything for it. So there is substantial growth, while there is still this weird revisionist history stuff that seems to be coming out of that administration. So that all said and aside, I do want to get into just a few things over on the mail time side before we sail off for the evening. So from Alfred's mom, Alfred's mom asks, hey, what ethnicity are the Kurds? They are their own. They are one of what would be considered the original Mesopotamian High Plains ethnicities. The Kurds are their own people. been around for a long time. A lot of people stay in that exact same region, and that has been a persistent culture for a very, very long time. It is also worth noting, by the way, given the way that their social media infrastructure is set up, which I didn't really know until this afternoon, that they are recognized in far more diplomatic and economic and communications groups as an independent entity, like their own independent governmental body, than I'd previously thought. I'm rather fascinated, to be honest with you. I'm rather fascinated with the growth of the Kurds. I really do think, and I hate to get ahead of myself on the article side of things here, but I really do believe that over the next couple of months, you are likely to see an independent Kurdistan recognized by the United States and established. So interesting stuff there, I would say here. As president of the United States Senate, is J.D. Vance able to schedule the vote on the SAVE Act if Thune is doing nothing? That's from Sharon Hunter. The answer on that particular question is there are a lot of procedural rules in place that though Vance is the president of the Senate, it's really only to call things into order, whereas the Senate Majority Leader typically does a lot of the introducing and scheduling. I don't know if Thune, under current parliamentary procedure, would be able to give that power up to Vance. I don't think he would. I would say this, though, because Senator John Cornyn and Senator John Thune is very much desirous, because Attorney General of Texas Ken Paxton has just all of the baggage in the world, more baggage than my eyes after keeping up with the toddlers all evening. That John Cornyn really, really wants President Trump to endorse. John Thune, Senate Majority Leader, really wants President Trump to endorse John Cornyn. I actually think we have that clip ready to go. Here's that clip from today.
I've spoken with the president already today about Texas, and I'm certainly hopeful. I think, as probably you know, Martha, I've made no secret of the fact that I hope the president will endorse John Cornyn. He is an incredibly effective senator for the state of Texas, a strong conservative voice here in the United States Senate.
Okay, you want that endorsed. By the way, here's a little wheeling and dealing. You know, you want to be in the room where it happens, whatever. You want a little sausage getting made here. Here's how you do it. Far be it from me. I know the man's got a ton of other stuff going on right now, but just in case the president hasn't thought about a little leverage here, I say it's very much worth it to sacrifice and endorse Cornyn and throw Paxton to the wolves and have Cornyn, who is a senator who absolutely can easily beat James Talarico without any problem. Paxton, there is no guarantee. I mean, it would be close. It would be a little close for my comfort. I don't want to see another Kari Lake situation or also another Kari Lake situation. But in this instance, for Trump, sacrificing saying, all right, I'm going to endorse John Cornyn for you, Thune, but here's the skinny. You've got to schedule the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, beautiful. Schedule it sooner than ever before. Schedule it for a talking filibuster. Let Cory Booker talk his little eyes out in a filibuster. Then I'll endorse Cornyn for you, Thune. If Trump does that, I'd say big slam dunk success. Now, again, far be it from me to give negotiation advice to the man who wrote The Art of the Deal. I'm just saying, I have no deep love for Paxton. Again, I prefer not to have senators who quack like a duck and smack themselves in the head with a hammer, personally. I wanted Representative Wesley Hunt. That's who. Now that primary is over, I can say this from my perspective here, since I doubt that Thune and Paxton are going to come on the show. But I very much would enjoy seeing Wesley Hunt, who was competent and also a phenomenal West Point veteran, and among a number of other things. I would prefer to see him win that election. He didn't. But hey, I think that there's a little bit of leverage there, and the Save America Act is far more important than the other. Lake was a buy-off gone wrong. I disagree. Kari Lake was a crazy person who said stupid things and shot herself in the foot. That would be why she lost. That would be why. Because she ran again and again, and she lost. That's why she lost. And by the way, that may be the one thing that you disagree with me on forever. That's totally fine. We don't have to agree on everything. That's totally cool. But I'm going to level with you. I can't stand Kari Lake at all because of that. She threw away that election for no reason. because she wanted to do the Tucker Carlson laugh as a campaign. And it was awful. And it was a disservice to the people of Arizona, by the way, just for me. Anyway, this is an establishment rhino live stream. I don't think so. I didn't say I was in love with Cornyn, by the way. I'm just making the case, just here, right now, that it's probably better to win elections in the upcoming races rather than, throwing it all, away. Now, again, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But in this particular instance, how do I explain MTG? Georgia is not Arizona. That's how a House district in Arizona or House district in Georgia is not a Senate or a gubernatorial election in purple Arizona. That's how I explain that. That'd be my personal thing here. So what do I think about Bondi being dragged before the Oversight Committee in the vote over Epstein stuff? Okay. Cool. Drag her. I guess. Drag her before. Ask your questions. Political theater. We'll get on C-SPAN. C-SPAN 2. We'll watch it. Everyone will do some yelling and shouting. It'll be a fun time. Committee. What's the House going to do? Write a strongly worded letter? Until the House impeaches James Boasberg, the judge of D.C., I'm not expecting miracles. They impeach James Boasberg, we'll talk. All right, they indict, with the DOJ, they indict Tim Walz or Keith Ellison for very obvious fraud and obfuscation and the obstruction of federal justice. Yeah, then we'll talk. Then I'll be like, yeah, sure, they can do things. Right now, the committees are just kind of ridiculous. So, that's just my personal hot take there. So that said, I think that with those, we'll kind of wrap things up for the evening. It's been fun. I will give credit to our dear Discord member, my very dear friend Matt, who goes by Tylenol American or Applebee's, for suggesting the way station idea a couple of times. So yes, I very much will give credit to my dear friend Matt over in the Discord, which is linked in the description if for some reason you want to talk to us throughout the rest of the day. I don't know why you would, but if you do, that link is in the description, and you can see, that Matt is the one who originally suggested the way station idea. So yeah, I have no problem. I don't need credit for that. Why would I take credit for something like that? I just want to see illegals stripped of their commercial driver's licenses and thrown out of the country until they learn the language, immigrate legally, adhere to the culture. Then we can talk about it. Yeah, so that stuff said, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Tomorrow, I will be speaking here at Maranatha Baptist University, this beautiful campus, my alma mater, for their Leader to Leader conference. And I think we might do a little stream of that, at least upload it at the end. So with that said, have a wonderful evening. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.